When I told this story to my friend, she told me it reminded her of something she heard about a famous person in the US. Something like how this person went to the airport, but when they got there, it was completely empty. My friend couldn't remember any of the details, so if any of you know it, please let me know. So now my story begins. I was working as a nurse 2 years ago. Those were extremely long days. 17 to 18-hour shifts were the norm. I had the morning shift and I made my way through the staff entrance, but when I walked in, everything was eerily quiet. I didn't see a single person. Usually, there's a lot of hustling and bustling with breakfast being carted in for the patients and morning checkups. Thinking it strange, I went into the locker rooms to get changed, but not a single coworker was present. I took my phone out and tried to call my friend, but she either had it off or didn't have reception and I couldn't get through. Either way, I got changed and went to the nurse station to sign in. On my way there, I didn't see a single doctor, nurse, or patient, and I suddenly felt really scared. I desperately wanted to find another person, but I felt like I shouldn't just walk around aimlessly. Seeing the phone in the nurse's station, I picked it up, but I couldn't hear anything on the line. It was dead. I took my phone out again, but dropped it because I was feeling such intense panic by this time. When I picked it up, the number to my parents' house was on the screen, so I pressed call without thinking twice. Tears streamed down my face when I heard the phone ring and my mum pick up. When I heard her pick up the phone, I spoke straight away. "Hello? Mum? Hey, where are you? Your coworker just called me from the hospital. She was worried because you hadn't shown up for work. Are you hurt? Did you get into an accident?" When I heard what she said, I felt all my strength drain out and I couldn't stand anymore. I sort of crumbled onto the floor where I was, and then my body froze. My phone battery had fallen off when I dropped it earlier. It was laying on the ground a couple meters away from me. So, how was I even speaking to my mum? I threw my phone and somehow found enough strength to run towards the exit. I can't remember exactly how I got there, which hallways I passed, but I was so out of breath when it came into view. I bent down trying to catch my breath, and then I looked up. There was a curved mirror above the exit, and when I looked at it, my reflection, which should have been there, wasn't. Everything went black, and I fainted. When I came to, I was lying on the lounge in the nurse's station. The sounds were back, the people were back, my everyday workplace. The friend that I had tried to call earlier was the one who called my mum. According to her, she found me unconscious by the staff entrance. Apparently, someone had come to let her know that I was there, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't recall what this person looked like. As in nothing. Not the face, not the height, not the gender, nothing. My coworker asked me what happened, and all I could do was explain to her what I just experienced, but I had no proof to back my story up. My phone had disappeared, and all my stuff that I'd put into the locker room was gone. The mirror above the exit? Well, that never even existed. One reader asked, "Did your mum actually get a call from you?" To which the writer responded, "Yes, she did. But when I tried to look at my phone bill, that call wasn't recorded. I was way too scared to ask her about it, but when I got home, my mum was the one who brought it up, so it definitely happened. My friend also told me I had called her from the hospital using my phone. I'm unclear about the times, but seeing they both got a call from me, I think we can safely assume that we were in the same time and in the same space." My question to you is, this obviously wasn't a dream because the writer's mother and friend got an actual call from her. How else could you explain this experience? Do parallel universes actually exist? Let me know your thoughts and if you've experienced anything like this before in the comments below. Mariko lives an hour away from the Tokyo Shinjuku train station. The day was Saturday. She had to go into work to tie up some loose ends. When she finished, she went for some drinks with her friends and took the last train home. The stop she gets off at is a bit in the countryside, so there aren't that many taxis, and she always has to wait in line to get home, especially on late nights. This week in particular was a hard week at work, and she'd had to take a taxi every day. Tired, a bit tipsy, and knowing she'd probably have to wait a while for a taxi, she made her way to the line. Surprisingly, there was only one woman waiting in line. Right, today's Saturday, so I guess it's not as busy as the weekdays, Mariko thought to herself. Breathing a sigh of relief, she walked up to the line when she heard someone running down the stairs. The man, dressed in a suit, ran past her and got in line behind the woman. Mariko couldn't help but feel a bit pissed off, but hey, there were only 2 people in front of her, so it wasn't all that bad. She got in line behind the man. After a couple of minutes, a taxi came along and took the woman. Just one more. 15 minutes passed by, and Mariko heard the shutters closing behind her. The train station had closed for the night. She turned around and saw the station attendant was doing his final rounds and eventually disappeared into the office. I wonder if I'll still be here when he goes home and turns off all the lights, she thought. Just then she saw headlights. It was another taxi, and the man in front of her climbed in. Watching it drive off, Mariko looked at her watch. It took 20 minutes for another taxi to get here. I hope I don't have to wait that long for the next one. I feel like it doesn't usually take this long between each arrival. And both taxis were black. I haven't seen any white taxis yet. Could it be that there's only one taxi tonight? Mariko ended up having to wait another 20 minutes when a black taxi arrived. She was right. There was only one driver working that night. She got in and told the driver her destination. Once they got close, she pointed out the machinery storage facility. Her house was past this facility over a small creek. She had to walk from that point on because the road got too narrow for cars to pass. The driver said, "Working late tonight? Night shift or something?" Not really any of your business, Mariko thought to herself. She was tired and she just wanted to get home, so she replied, "Yeah, something like that." They approached the storage facility, so she took out her wallet to get ready to pay when the driver asked, "Are you from around here?" Now she was starting to get annoyed. No, I'm not," she replied somewhat harshly. Just then, they drove past the storage facility. Sir, excuse me, I need to get off here." "You rode this taxi on Tuesday too, didn't you?" he asked, ignoring her. They were well past the storage facility now, and he kept driving. Mariko started to get nervous as she thought back to the past week. She had taken a taxi home every night because she had to work late. What was he trying to get at? 2 to 3 minutes went by, and the driver finally pulled into a convenience store parking lot. Once the car was parked, he turned around to face her. "I'm so sorry, ma'am, but—" and he pulled out his business card. "The number to the company is here. If you want to call and complain, I don't mind. Give them my name. It's right here on the card." According to him, he had driven her on Tuesday night too. He didn't recognize her at first, but as soon as she mentioned the storage facility, he remembered. He continued talking. "You know the man that went before you? He got dropped off at that exact location. He was on the phone the entire time while I drove him. He was saying things like he'll be there real soon, giving whoever he was talking to the approximate time until he reached the destination." Mariko couldn't quite put 2 and 2 together. She was still feeling nervous, so she asked the driver why he brought her all the way out here. He said, "Well, it didn't look like you were from around here, and you got dropped off at that location on Tuesday. I didn't think much of it until after I dropped the guy off. He wasn't dressed like he worked in a factory, and there are no lights there at night. As I was heading back to the station to get you, I saw a wagon parked on the other side of the storage facility. I think there were 4 people in it, and when my headlights hit the car, they all ducked down. But I'm pretty sure the one sitting in the driver's seat was the guy I dropped off tonight, just before you. I got a bad feeling, so that's why I brought you here." Then she remembered something which made her skin crawl. While she was lined up at the queue, standing behind the guy, She had called her mum to tell her she was waiting for a taxi to take her home. And she mentioned the exact place she'd be getting off. When I was in elementary school, Super Famicom came out. All the boys, including myself, were crazy for it, but not every household had one. There was a university student living next door, and he was really nice and smart, so my mum asked him to be my tutor. As we started to get to know each other as tutor and student, I found out he had the new Super Famicom, so my friends and I sometimes went over to his place to play. We were probably loud and annoying, but it didn't seem to bother him, and he'd always let us in and even join us to play. 6 months since I first started going over with my friends, our neighbour suddenly changed. He'd constantly be on the phone when we were over and completely ignore us. The weird thing is that he never spoke a word the entire time. Mobile phones weren't common back then, so he was using his home phone. He'd dial a number, put the phone to his ear, and not say a word. He'd then put the phone down and keep repeating the same thing over and over again. This weird behavior continued, and we started to get a bit freaked out. Then my friend bought a Famicom, so we stopped going to my neighbour's place and went to our friend's house instead. At around the same time, he stopped being my tutor. He told my mum that he was getting a bit busy with all of his uni work, so none of us thought anything of it. A few months went by, and one day I saw a familiar face on the news. It was my neighbour, and it said that he had killed some woman. I found out later, but he apparently got dumped by his then girlfriend, and he started to follow her around and harass her, ultimately killing her. As you probably already guessed, the phone calls he was making while we were at his house were all to his ex-girlfriend.